Hello! For those of you who don't know, I am a full-time working parent of two gorgeous little girls, and I have made these videos for my sister Emily, who lives on the other side of the world, and therefore we don't get to see each other so much. And I wanted a nice way of being able to share my advice and tips on parenting without it being too overwhelming every time we see each other or talk on the phone. I very much am a busy working parent, so today I am cooking dinner at the same time as making this video for you. So hi Emily, today's video I'm making for you is about shopping, yay shopping, but specifically about the bigger ticket items. So I'm going to talk about pushchair and car seat a little bit, cot and high chair. Those are kind of the big ones that pretty much everyone is going to buy, everyone's going to need. And I'll make a separate video on everything else shopping, because I think those things are more, not flexible necessarily, but like random, not everyone needs them. You might not need all of them, whereas these are kind of like, say, pretty much everyone's gonna need them. Also, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm not a professional, and so I'm not gonna edit this and make it all nice and fancy, so you get my ums and ahs and I'm assuming me walking in and out of the shot whilst I'm trying to make soup. So let's see. Okay, so starting, I'm also cutting onions, so this is going to be comical. Starting with pushchair. So obviously we've talked a little bit about this anyway, but my view on pushchair is basically it's kind of like asking someone, I want to buy a car, what car should I buy? It's so dependent on your needs, your budget, what you do, how you think you're going to use it, when you're going to use it, how often you're going to use it. I think one of the most eye-opening things for us was we went to go stay with some friends who live in Cambridge, and they go everywhere by car. So their car seat is super important to them. They'd spent so much time researching, thinking of the right one, and making sure it was perfect. But their pushchair, they got secondhand on Facebook Marketplace. They'd kind of picked one at random that was more to do with the budget that they had. And they basically said they were thinking of selling it again because they'd barely used it. They drive everywhere. They take the car seat with the child out of the car, go and do what they're going to do, go into their friend's house or go into the shop, and then that's it. So they had no need for a pushchair. Whereas us, we live in central London, we walk everywhere. We very rarely go in the car, and if we do, it's to do a very long drive. So we have a weird thing with the car seat whereby we don't use it that often, but when we do, the kids are in it for 7-8 hours. Obviously not all in one go, but in one journey, because we're driving up to the north of England or we're driving down to Devon. So our pushchair is our equivalent of a car. So important things for us were things like storage. So we have been through a few different pushchairs. I'm obviously not a professional YouTuber, nor have I been paid to recommend any of these brands. These are just ones I've had. I have had a lot of different ones. I use Facebook Marketplace quite a lot to effectively trade in pushchairs. I buy what I think is going to be useful, get it secondhand, use it for as long as it's useful, sell it again on Facebook Marketplace, and tend to, make that work. And that's allowed me to be super flexible with what I need. I'm not very good at working out what I need too far in advance. I think it's one of the hardest things about when you're at the shopping stage and you're prepping for things for the baby is you effectively have to imagine what your life is going to be like when you have this baby. How are you going to spend your days? What are you going to do? Are you going to walk places? Are you going to drive places? Are you going to go to baby groups? And you have no fucking idea because you don't do that yet. Because at the moment, you work full time and your husband works full time. And all of a sudden, you're going to change what you do and change how you spend your time. It's really hard to imagine what that's going to be like. I think also, my point of view on this, but I think some people's kids don't like the car seat, don't like the pushchair, and they adapt. The reason I say Emily knows what I'm talking about is my view is that if you want your kids to like the pushchair, you work on it, and they eventually like the pushchair. If you want your kid to like the car seat because you have to do long drives, you work on it, and they will eventually get there. So my view is don't be defeated by what you think your kid wants. You're the parent, you're in charge, and you can adapt them to work to what you need them to. But maybe that's because I have easy kids who are malleable. But yeah, so storage is a big thing when it comes to pushchair. We go out in our pushchair all day, every day. And so we need a lot of storage. We also go and do our food shops, like by hand. We don't go in the car, we walk to the shop, we get what we need. So for me, having a pushchair that had a lot of storage was really important. But if you drive to go and do your food shop, if you're not going to be walking to swim class, so don't need to have your swim bag underneath, as well as all the stuff you've got to take to the post office, or you're not running errands and anything, then you really don't need as much storage. So storage is one element to think about. I should say, so my main pushchair I have is an upper baby, and I'll talk a little bit more about kind of why I chose that. I also have a Baby Zen yo-yo, which is our travel pushchair. At various times I've also had a Thule running buggy, which I love, but it's very expensive. And then now, because I have two babies, we use an out and about nipper as like our main everyday pushchair. But the upper baby has been amazing. And as I say, it has a huge amount of storage. We joke that it's our Range Rover, because yeah, it really does. I can get a whole week's worth of shop for the four of us, as well as everything I need to run errands, to go to the post office, the nappy bag for two babies, plus a swim kit and everything else. Like, it really does have so much storage. The yo-yo, for example, though, has basically none. It has really minimal storage. We use it mostly when we go on holiday, and so you've got bigger bags anyway. So you kind of just accept that's part of it. But the advantage of that is it folds up really small, whereas the upper baby doesn't. So it takes up a lot more space in our house. So storage. Next, wheels. So this is something that I guess is going to be relevant for you in Canada as well, Emily. But for us in London, is obviously not so much of a big deal. But how big are the wheels? How durable are the wheels? You can get wheels that are like tires. So inflate and deflate. Our upper baby nipper has that. Sorry, not our upper baby. Our out and about nipper has that. Because we use that if we're going to go to the park. We use it for muddy. And so it's useful to have the bounce and the give of a real tire. Whereas the yo-yo just has small, tiny kind of like plastic ones. Again, we are going on the bus, we're going on the tube, we're going chucking it in the boot of the car if we're going on long drives and things. So we don't necessarily need a super off-road vehicle. But that's why we ended up having to get the running buggy separately so that it could do that. So if your intention is to only have one pushchair, which is normal to be fair, then these are things you kind of got to make compromises on, and you've got to decide what's the best fit. However, if like me, you're planning on having an army of pushchairs in the front room of your house, then you can kind of decide obviously what you want to have for each need. But these are kind of things, if you're going to choose your one main pushchair and that's what you're looking to do, then it's kind of working out those compromises. So wheels. Compactness. That is the next thing to think about. So as I mentioned before, the upper baby doesn't fold down as small. It does fold. It does very easily fit in a cloakroom or front hall or whatever. But the yo-yo is amazing. It folds down into the size of a tote bag, goes over your shoulder. It literally has a strap that goes over your shoulder. So it is, this might be a little bit noisy because I'm just gonna put the fan on whilst I just cook. Hopefully you can still hear me. But yeah, so think about how much it needs to fold up. If it needs to go in the boot of your car, measure the boot of your car first. Or if you can go and see pushchairs and test them out, it may be that where you are in Canada, you can go and park out front and you can literally try the pushchairs in the back of the car. We are obviously much more limited in London. We went to White City, oh my god, it was called Westfield, and they had a really big John Lewis there, which was super helpful, and a really big Mamas and Papas, which I recommend for anyone who does live in London. But obviously you can't take them to our car and try them out, so we just had to measure. But yeah, so think about the compactness, think about whether you're gonna need to ever carry it folded up. Again, that's why we have separate travel pushchairs. The yo-yo goes in the hold, you can take it on the plane. If anyone is planning on traveling more than once with a baby, I cannot recommend the yo-yo enough. Whereas obviously we wouldn't travel with our upper baby, it'd be massive. We'd have to put it in the hold, and there's obviously a risk of it getting damaged or getting lost. But yeah, so compactness. Flexibility, that is key. So some pushchairs will come as they are, as it were. It's a chair and wheels and a handle. The travel systems, which are kind of the bigger things like upper baby and things, they will normally come with a bassinet or newborn version and then a chair version when they're older. You can normally switch them about 4 or 5 months, depending on how big your kid is, and how well they are able to kind of hold up their head. For us, a really important thing has always been, as I mentioned in some of my other videos, is flexibility. So can one thing do more than one thing? And does it give us scope to be flexible? So one of the big reasons why we bought the upper baby is because the bassinet that it comes with is approved as a primary sleep location for babies because it has an amount of airflow that comes in underneath. That meant we didn't have to buy a separate Moses basket or baby bassinet to go in our bedroom. So we had the bassinet attachment on the pushchair during the day to go around, and then in the evening it unclipped from the wheels, came to our bedroom, and we had a little stand in our bedroom next to our bed, and that went on the stand, and it meant that the babies could then, one at a time, so I should specify that I have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, so each in turn, they could sleep in the bassinet next to the bed. I think we definitely found that we suspect that also meant that they slept quite well in their pushchair during the day because they were so used to that being their primary location, but that may just be had kids who liked sleeping pushchair, so that wasn't really an issue. The other element about flexibility is our yo-yo, for example, is only forward facing, which I was nervous about, particularly being in central London, having the babies outward facing all the time. We're obviously walking a lot near cars and kind of at car height, also lots of big dogs and things like that in our area that we were kind of a bit nervous about. So we wanted one that you could have them forward facing and rear facing. So the upper baby is great because you can pick the chair up and you can turn it around even whilst they're in it. So you have that flexibility. It also had the scope. We knew that we were going to try for a second really close together. So one of the big benefits of something like upper baby, and I'm not saying that this is the only one that has these features. There's lots of other pushchairs that have the same feature. It's just, this is my experience. It was able to turn into a double decker or a 2-baby pushchair. So when our second baby was first born, we had our older one in the chair and we had the younger one in the bassinet that kind of sat underneath and kind of made like bunk beds. And that was great because it meant we didn't have to buy, at the time, a second pushchair to have 2 kids. That has changed now they're a bit older because we didn't want to buy the second chair to go with the upper baby. So once the younger one grew out of the bassinet, we then ended up buying the Out and About nipper. Because we've got that second hand on Facebook Marketplace, they sit next to each other, which is nicer now that they're a bit older. But also that was cheaper than buying just the chair attachment to the upper baby, because it's very expensive. And then the last point is about durability and luxury. And this is basically like how much do you want to spend, because how much do you use your pushchair? So as I say, like our friends in Cambridge, they don't use it very much, so there's no point in buying the top of the range, there's no point in that being where you spend all your money. So they obviously spent more money on their car seat, that was much more an important element for them, and they spent more money on other things instead. Versus for us, it's our main thing, it's more important on our car. So for us, we needed something durable, we needed something that we enjoyed, something that was really comfortable. You know, the handle height adjusts for me and my husband, which was really important. We have a big height difference, but that was, you know, it needed to be a really comfortable, experience for both of us to use. So those are really key things that have been for us, but I hope that gives you an idea of the things to think about, the questions to ask when you're deciding what pushchair to get. I know, Emily, you've already started to think about what pushchair you're gonna get, and I know you are thinking about the Bugaboo Donkey, which I also think is great. You've got the added advantage, you don't have to try and get through narrow doorways or get on the tube or on the bus and things like that. So I think that's a great option. So super recommend the Bugaboo. All of the Bugaboos have been great. Lots of my friends have Bugaboos and they really recommend them. I would also look at Mamas and Papas for anyone else. As I say, the shop experience is really helpful, and they have people who kind of talk through, but their pushchairs are great. Some of my closest friends have got those. And then other kind of big household names in the UK are Eye Candy and Silver Cross and Joey and things. But obviously, in each country, you're going to have different options. So have a look around near you and see what works. Okay, sorry, I know I talk very fast. So that is everything pushchair. Oh, so then related to that is the car seat. In the UK, a big thing is to get travel systems. I'm not sure how much this is a thing outside of the UK, but we got sold into the whole travel system, and this basically means that the car seat comes with the pushchair. So I have the upper baby car seat, the upper baby Mesa, that came as in the package with the pushchair bassinet and seat. What's really handy about that is that if I were to, and I think I've done it twice, but drive to the supermarket, baby is in the car seat, I can clip the car seat out of the car, clip it onto the wheels of my pushchair, and I can then go straight into the supermarket with her in the car seat still. It's also super useful if they fall asleep in the car seat. You're obviously not meant to keep them in the car seat. I say obviously. This is when you get to it, you'll know. It'll say in lots of books, and it's important to like know this and research. But you're not meant to keep young babies in their car seat for more than about 2 hours. So if they do fall asleep in the car seat, you are meant to transfer them to their cot or to a flat surface. But the reality is when they're young and they're napping for 40 minutes, maybe 2 hours max, we found it was much easier to just let them sleep in the car seat until their next nap. If it was bedtime, we would of course transfer them, because you don't want them to do a full night's sleep if they're sleeping through, but a long amount of time in the car seat. So so we found that super helpful, that if they fell asleep in the car seat, we could take it out of the car once we got home, we could clip it onto the wheels, and then one of us could take them for a lap, or bring it inside and just clip them onto the pushchair wheels in the front hall, and then kind of carry on until they woke up. So that was super useful. And I think if you live somewhere that you are going to be going in and out of the car, you're popping into town, you're going to the shops, it is really useful instead of having to take them in and out of the car seat each time. Like I say, like we've not really had that issue, but I feel like that would be a nightmare. So that's kind of that point on the car seat. What I would say though is safety is so paramount in this kind of conversation, and I think it is much more important to make sure that you have the safest item, the safest car seat, over practicality. In the UK, we have the advantage that you can't sell things unless they're tested. Like you can't sell subpar car seats. Everything has to be of a certain standard. I know, so our brother lives in New Zealand, and we were having a conversation with him, and he was saying, make sure you go for an international brand, make sure you check its safety ratings and things. And I was thinking, oh, crazy. We kind of don't really have that issue here in the UK because everything has to be of a certain standard. But check your safety ratings in your country. You know, Emily, obviously that I did quite a bit of research into Canadian car seats, because we were coming out on holiday, and so we wanted to buy Emily and her husband their car seat for the new baby as a gift, so that we could use it whilst we're on holiday. That may seem like a dick move, but that's how we roll. So we've already bought Emily and Mars their car seat, and we got the Britax Roma. Once my kids had grown out of their infant car seat, we moved them into the Britax Roma 360, which is what we have here in the UK, and I found the closest version to that in Canada. But in doing so, did loads of research into kind of car safety and in Canada and the laws and the rules. The important one being that I couldn't take a UK car seat to Canada, and it would be against the law to do that. So I couldn't just bring one on holiday with me. I would have to rent a Canadian one, and I was nervous about renting, so that's why we ended up buying one. But long and short of it is, do the research, find out the rules in your area, find out what's important. In the UK, ISOFIX is a great thing, so you can clip it straight into the car. There's a lot less movement instead of just using a seatbelt. But the great thing about a lot of the car seats is that you can have an ISOFIX base and have that in, say, your car, but then you can take your car seat and strap it in with a strap if, say, your parents are visiting and they're taking the kid, or you have two cars. So look into safety, that's the most important thing, particularly if you don't need the practicality elements as much. I've not really got a lot more to say on car seats because, as I say, we bought the one that came with our travel system, and then we got the one with the highest safety rating, which was the Britax Roma. The 360 element was amazing, having the swivel once the kids were a bit older to get them in and out of the car. And it also is nicely reclined. It has different recline positions, but as I mentioned, if we're going in the car, we are often in the car for 7-8 hours in a drive. We obviously stop and wiggle the kids and things, but it's much more comfortable for them because they will often sleep in the car, for it to have all the different recline positions. Okay, so car seat out of the way. Cot is the next one. So what's maybe more important to consider than the cot, because what I would say is you don't necessarily need to have the cot before the baby arrives. It's one of those things that everyone wants to have the nursery set up and have it all Instagram ready and all of that kind of stuff. But actually, most people will have their baby in their room until they are about 6 months. That tends to be the norm. And in the UK, that's what's recommended by the NHS. Is to have the NHS and the Lullaby Trust, which I recommend looking at for anyone in the UK. It's all about safe sleep. They recommend you have the baby in the room with you until they're 6 months old. So, given that you don't necessarily need the cot straight away, it's more important to think about the stages and steps that they're going to be in before they get to the cot. So, what are they going to sleep in when they're a newborn, when they're first straight out? This is normally a Moses basket or a bassinet. As I mentioned, we used our pushchair bassinet. This was perfect for us. Our first baby was quite small, and so she didn't grow that until she was 5 months old, and then she went straight from that into her cot. So that worked out really well for us. It meant we didn't need to buy anything else. We already knew we needed a cot, and we already had the pushchair, so there was no kind of additional step that we needed to buy. But our second baby was much bigger, and she grew out of the bassinet when she was 2.5, 3 months old. So we got what is called a next to me here in the UK. I don't know what it's called in Canada, but it is like a mini crib where the side zips off and you kind of attach it to the side of your bed. We didn't actually do that bit and attach it to the side of our bed. We had it with the side up at the end of our bed because we wanted to create positive sleep habits, make her feel safe and comfortable on her own so that she would have an easier transition to bed. Each to their own. I'm not even going to begin to talk about sleep on this video because it's a whole kettle of fish. But yeah, so that's what we did. So we got that next to me from a friend who got it for free, which was really kind. She'd finished having kids and asked if we wanted it. So very, very kind that we were able to get that without having to buy another element. I would definitely recommend next to me or like a little sleep pod, particularly given you don't know how big the baby's going to be beforehand. But what you can do is wait until the baby's born, see how they are size-wise, see how you get on with the bassinet if you go down the bassinet route, and then when they grow out of it, make a decision on what to do, right? Because you can decide at that point if they're like our first was, actually she was 5 months by the time she grew out. We had a sofa bed in her bedroom, in her nursery. So what we ended up doing was all moving into her room at 5 months. She slept in the cot, and then we slept on the pull-out sofa for a month. So we still had her in the same room as us until she was 6 months old, but didn't have to buy another item. That obviously doesn't work for everyone, but that's what we did. Whereas, as I mentioned, with our second, we didn't feel comfortable moving her up into her own room. We also didn't want to sleep on the sofa bed for 3 months. So we got her next to me until she was 6 months old, and then she moved into her cot. You know, I remember we just did a week of overlap, so I slept up in her room for a week to help her make that transition. But you know, as they each their own. So once they then go into their cot, you can then decide whether they're going to be in a actual cot or crib, and then a cot bed. I know that in Canada they call it lots of different things. You've got various stages of crib, and there's something called a pack and play, and all sorts of different elements. But yeah, I don't know what the correct terms are in Canada, so roll with me. But basically, a cot bed is a cot where both the sides eventually can come off, and it can transition to being a toddler's bed. This is obviously useful from my point about flexibility. Everything can be more than one item. What it also means is that you can take one side off to see if they're kind of ready to have the sides off, and then it makes a kind of, they're not going to fall down the back, and it makes a kind of 3-walled cot. So those are slightly more expensive than a cot that's not a cot bed or a crib, depending on what it's called, but may have less features, may not be as practical. It's also going to be bigger, so it depends on how much space you've got. So it's kind of worth looking into those and working out which is the best for you. For our first, we got a cot bed. We wanted to make the most of everything having more than one purpose, more than one role. So we also got one that had a drop side, because I was worried, because I knew that we were going to try for a second. I was worried about being pregnant and bending over the crib. I actually never dropped the side because it was a bit squeaky and made a bit of noise, and often when I was transferring her into the cot, I didn't want to then make the noise. So I actually never used the drop side. And the other thing is, and obviously Emily, you have this problem even worse than I do, is that I'm quite short. I'm 5'4", Emily is gonna go with 4'11", not on a good day. But so it's, as long as you can reach the lowest level of the cot to lower the baby in, then I think you're fine to get away without the drop side. But have a look and see what you think. On that, with most cribs and cots, the where the mattress is, the base can go up and down. It normally has 2 or 3 different heights. We were really like, we need to have lots of different options, and that must be a good feature, that it's got 3 different heights. With our first, we only ever did the highest height because we moved to when she was 5 months, and then the lowest, because as soon as they can sit up, you have to move it down to the lowest one so that they can't climb out. So with our second baby, what we did is, because our first wasn't old enough, or we didn't feel comfortable with her moving to a whole bed, we ended up buying a second cot bed, which was a bigger one, didn't have the drop side, didn't have the different heights, so it was cheaper, and that kind of worked. And then with our younger one, we then moved her into the cot when she was 5 months old, 5.5, no, it must have been a week before she was 6 months. We moved her up to the cot, out of the next to me pod, and we just had it on the lowest height, so we never used the different heights. So for example, the IKEA basic one doesn't have different heights. I don't think that's an issue, particularly if you're going to have a kind of a next to me pod where you're going to see how you get on with the bassinet. I really wouldn't stress about the different heights. It wasn't something that we particularly needed. And I think as long as you can bend down and reach the lowest, it's always going to be safer for them to be on the lowest setting. Because then there's no risk of them like sitting up or rolling out. One thing to note, if you get a second-hand one, you have to get a new mattress. It's not safe to reuse mattresses, which is also why we ended up getting a second cot, because we weren't ready to go for a bed with our 2 babies. They take specific sheets. Make sure you measure or like know how big the mattress is, so you can make sure you get the right sheets for the right size. Oh, on that, so with the bassinet, with the pushchair, we bought Moses basket sheets that fit the little mattress in the bassinet. That was super useful. We also put a muslin over the top half of that, tucked it in very tight so it was like a fitted sheet, but it meant if she spit up or anything, we could change it really easily. But if you don't put on a mattress protector and a sheet, like the mattress will get ruined as soon as they have a blowout or a sick or whatever. So get sheets for that, it's really, really useful. But also doing the muslin over the top is really useful as well. So like a bigger one, and then you don't need to change the sheets every time. So that was super useful. So I think that's everything on cot. Obviously think about what the space you've got and the price you want to spend. I think for a lot of people, they like the idea of having a kind of matching set in the bedroom, which if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But I don't think it's something that I don't think there's any functionality that you get from those more expensive ones that are essential. So yeah. That is cool. Oh, and then, so we mentioned briefly about pack and play type thing. I know, Emily, that you have one because I bought one and left you one. So we needed a travel cot whilst we were visiting Emily this summer. And so we bought a pack and play, which has a bassinet layer that kind of zips in at the higher level, and then obviously a kind of normal travel cot at the bottom. That's super useful, and I think Emily's going to find it really, really helpful, because when you're at home, if you're doing stuff around the house, when they're little, you don't necessarily want to go and put them in your room to sleep. You want somewhere for them to be able to sleep where you're in the same room as you for the day, at least for the first 3 months. After that, you may want to get them to learn to have kind of structured naps in their room, each to their own. We did with our second. We kind of followed quite a, not strict, but a structured schedule to try and encourage naps and things like that. So she napped in her bedroom most of the time, and in the next to me pod, or in our room in the next to me pod, whichever one we could make dark enough, basically. But whilst they're little, they nap in the room. They tend to be in the room that you're in. So having the pushchair bassinet was super useful, because we could just have that on the floor in the living room. I could pick it up and carry it if I was doing laundry. I could take it upstairs with me if I was going to go and put laundry away or whatever. Or if I was going to go and have a nap myself, I could just take it upstairs. So that was super useful. And again, the pack and play can basically be that. You have that in your living room. They can nap in there during the day. You're not then having to put them back upstairs or whatever for a nap. It's obviously not as flexible because you can't carry it around as easily, but I think will provide good flexibility if you have a good open plan house and you know you're going to spend most of your time in your living room. And then the other big thing with the bassinet, obviously, was if we went to my father-in-law's house, for example, and stayed overnight, we didn't need a travel cot until she'd grown out of the bassinet, because we just take the bassinet with us, and we were going to take a pushchair, and so we could then pop that wherever. Now we have travel cots everywhere. We have them at we have them at my parents' house. We have them at my husband's parents' house, and we have one that travels with us. It's mad. 2 kids is so much stuff. Okay, and then I really thought this was gonna be like a really short, quick video. The last one then that I was going to talk about on this video is the high chair. The big thing that I would say on high chair, maybe controversially, is most people regret their purchase. I'm looking at my laptop for notes, by the way, that's why I keep looking at it. Most people regret their purchase as they go for style over function. Everybody wants to have the nice one that looks nice in their house. I am not saying that there is anything wrong with that, but please, please, please make sure you think about functionality first. If it isn't functional, it just looks nice, it's just not gonna be the one. So my parents bought, very, very kindly, had a high chair in their house, which was actually for my nephews who live in New Zealand. They got for when they first visited, and it's a really beautiful wooden one. Looks really nice in the house, but oh my god, it was a nightmare until she was about 1 and could fully like sit up forward comfortably and eat. Like at the beginning when they're like 6 months and they're still quite wobbly, yes they can hold their head up, yes they can sit up, but not kind of fully sit up at a table for a long period of time. It was really difficult pushchair to use. Pushchair, high chair. So what I would say is the things to think about in terms of functionality. How easy is it to clean? Feeding babies, weaning is so messy. I cannot describe it. My first baby was very, very clean and tidy. My second baby throws stuff at the wall. I literally was cleaning porridge off the side of our wall the other day. It goes everywhere. It's absolute carnage. So I would also think about getting a mat that goes on the floor underneath for when they throw things. Everything gets thrown, everything gets chucked. It's the stare in your eyes and then hand down and drop that is the worst. But yes, very messy. So how easy it's to clean. So if you've got a fabric one, can all the parts come off? Can it go in the washing machine? Can it wipe clean in the short term kind of interim? Because that's kind of, you don't want to be putting, when they get up to 3 meals a day, you don't want to be putting it in the washing machine after every single meal. But if it's plastic or wood or something, it's obviously much easier to clean. It does have a footrest. This is really important and somewhat underestimated for some of the cheaper ones. It's really important for kids to have something to rest their feet against. Helps them stay in the right position. As I mentioned, the one my parents had was quite slippy and slidey. Didn't have kind of good upright position, and the footrest was too far away for them to reach, and so they would slip and slide and be at kind of backward angle. So having either an adjustable footrest or one that you can adjust is, I would say, a very key feature. On some of them you can buy you can buy a footrest to attach if it doesn't come with one, so that's worth looking into. Flexible height and straps. Basically, you don't know how big your baby's going to be when they're 6 months. You also don't know how long they're going to be in a high chair for. We had our first baby was just over 1.5 when our second baby was born, and she was still very much in a high chair then. And really we only transitioned her out of a high chair because our next one needed the high chair, and I didn't want to have 2 high chairs. So at just over 2. So they're in it for quite a long time. You can obviously transition them out earlier if you want, and move to a small chair. You can go for like a low table and a low chair set, or we have a booster seat for our older one now. So she sits on a booster seat which sits on a dining room chair, and so she sits on that, so then we can all sit and kind of eat together if we're going to eat together. But yeah, does it have flexible heights? Does it have flexible straps? Can it grow with the kid? How easy is it to move the table in and out? How easy is it to adjust the size? Those are all really important things to look at and work out. And again, you could buy one that works really well at the beginning and then go and look for something else, or see how you feel at the time, or you can buy something that is going to kind of transition and grow with them. Going to be more expensive, but you're buying less things. It's really, really up to you. So the main one that we have, I say main one, the one that we have at our house, we have a Maxi Cozy Minla 6-in-1. It was a gift, which was a very, very generous gift, and it's very much top of the range, very expensive, but it's fantastic. It really, really is. It worked really well. So it can adjust height for different tables. So when we moved house, it was really useful because we could adjust it to the new table. If I'm cooking, so I'm cooking at an island at the moment, I can bring the high chair next to the island and adjust her height so that she's sat at the same level as the island, so I can feed her whilst I'm cooking or something. When she was really little, it can basically lie flat, so it makes a kind of like a bouncer, like a floating bouncer, I say floating, it's obviously on legs, but you know what I mean, like it just makes like a higher bouncer. And again, like when I'm in the kitchen or if I'm mopping the floor or doing something where I don't really want her low down, I could lay it flat and lay her in that when she was first newborn, and that was super useful. It flat packs, which means in our old house we had a much smaller kitchen. We didn't really have space to have the highchair out all the time, and so we could flat pack it and tuck it down the side of the fridge, and it was out of the way. That was super useful. It's on wheels, so we could move it around. It came with the booster seat, which is what our toddler now sits on. It is amazing, but I'm aware that it's top of the range, and I think if we were buying ourselves, we wouldn't necessarily have spent that much money. But I'm very grateful we have it. At my father-in-law's house, we have the John Lewis basic one. Basic by name, basic by nature. The slant is quite wrong. It's clunky. You have to lift the table up to put her in and then put the table down, which now that she is just over 1 is getting really difficult to do. So you then have to have the table down and then try and squeeze her in, which is quite difficult. The cover doesn't come off, so it doesn't go in the wash particularly easily, but we're only at his house once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. So I didn't want to spend a lot of money. I think it was about £15. I wanted something easy, and it flat packs that could be put away for when we weren't there. So that is why I got that one. What I wish we had at his house is the IKEA basic one. I cannot recommend it enough. If we go to a restaurant or a cafe or anywhere, they normally have an IKEA one, and they are fantastic. They look basic and they don't look particularly pretty, but there's loads of videos on YouTube on like how to tart them up and make them nice, and you can get stickers and cushions and things to make them look pretty. The reason there are so many videos about it is because it is so good. Super easy to clean, super comfortable for the kid, really easy to strap them in and get them in and out. But it doesn't flat pack, it doesn't go away, and you have to buy a footrest to attach because it doesn't have one. So pros and cons to all of them, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what things to think about with the high chair. So those are big ticket items. Those are basically the main things. And even saying that, like, definitely have your pushchair before your baby arrives. It will be a nightmare if you don't have that. Definitely have your car seat before your baby arrives. That is also going to be a nightmare. It is a myth that you have to have a car seat to be allowed to leave hospital. As you know, Emily, when I had my second baby, because we live in central London, I got the train home from the hospital. Nobody asked where my car seat was, nobody queried, and it was actually because it was my father-in-law's house and we'd forgotten to bring it back. I had her a bit early, so we just went to bed. So I put her in the wrap, like little sling thing, and got on the train and got the train home. So yeah, you do not have to have a car seat, but I would recommend having that done beforehand. I would also recommend having it fitted into the car with plenty of time instead of doing what we did and not having it for the first week. It's a bit of a nightmare. But as I mentioned, we didn't really go anywhere in the car, so it wasn't too much of an issue. So yes, the cot you don't need to have beforehand, and I would even say I wouldn't bother, and I wouldn't bother setting it up unless you're one of those people who likes to have your nursery done. See how big they are, see how you're getting on. You could end up co-sleeping and co-sleeping for 5 years and never needing it. So I would say make sure you know where they're going to sleep when they are newborn for the first 3 months, and maybe have in your mind where they might sleep after that, like a Nextome or a pod if you're thinking of one of those. But I wouldn't stress too much about the cot until a bit later on. And high chair you don't need until you're going to wean. Most people don't start until 6 months. That's what's recommended here in the UK. Some countries recommend from 4 months, but even then you've got plenty of time, so don't stress too much about those bits. Cool. Okay, I hope you could hear me over the sound of me cooking in the background. But yeah, hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, obviously just message me or put in the comments if it's somebody who isn't my sister. And yeah,